Welcome to Sleeping Centuries. Tonight, we travel back over 1,000 years to the frozen shores of Scandinavia, to the world of the Norse people, the real Vikings. Not the warriors of movies and television, but the farmers, the sailors, the storytellers. The ordinary people who lived and worked and slept under vast dark skies. Tonight we are going to discover something surprisingly intimate about these remarkable people. Something rarely discussed in history books. We are going to discover how the Vikings actually slept. So find a comfortable position now. Let your body sink into wherever you are resting. Let the cold Norse night surround you. Let the distant fire warm you. And let the story carry you gently into sleep. Let us begin. In the Norse language, Old Norse, the word for night was not. And not was not simply darkness. It was a goddess. The Norse people personified the night as a powerful female figure who rode across the sky each evening on her horse Rimfaxi, meaning frosty mane. As her horse galloped through the heavens, the foam from its bit fell to earth as the morning dew. This is how the Norse people understood the transition from night to day, not as a mechanical turning of the earth, but as a goddess riding her horse across the sky. The Norse world was one of extremes. In the far north of Scandinavia, winter nights could last nearly 20 hours. Imagine that, 20 hours of darkness. The sun barely rising above the horizon before sinking again. The world reduced to a narrow band of grey light at midday, and then darkness again. In this world of extreme darkness, sleep was not something to be resisted. It was something to be surrendered to, deeply, completely, gratefully. The Norse people understood darkness differently than we do. We fight it with electric light. We scroll through bright screens. We resist the pull of sleep. But a Viking farmer sitting by his fire as the 20th hour of darkness settled over his farm had no such resistance. The darkness came, the fire burned low, and sleep came naturally, like breathing, like the tide. Let us step inside the Viking home. The primary dwelling of the Norse people was called a longhouse, and the name tells you everything. These were long, narrow buildings constructed from timber, turf, and stone, depending on what the local landscape provided. In Norway, where forests were abundant, longhouses were built from heavy wooden planks. In Iceland, where trees were scarce, they were built from turf and stone, thick walls of earth that held heat like a natural insulator. The longhouse was not just a home, it was everything. It was the kitchen, the dining hall, the bedroom, the workshop, and the barn, all under one roof. Walking inside a Viking longhouse at night, your eyes would first be drawn to the center of the room. There, running along the entire length of the building, was the most important feature of Norse domestic life, the long fire. This was not a fireplace in a wall like we might have today. It was an open hearth built directly into the earthen floor, a long trench of glowing embers running down the middle of the room. Above it, the smoke rose slowly toward a narrow opening in the roof, a hole that let the smoke out and a tiny sliver of starlight in. The fire never went out. It was the heartbeat of the longhouse, the source of heat, light, cooking, and community. Letting it die was considered deeply irresponsible, almost shameful. Before sleep, the fire was carefully banked. Large pieces of wood or peat were placed strategically to burn slowly through the night, maintaining just enough heat to keep the longhouse warm until morning. This was often the last task of the evening, tending the fire, making sure the heartbeat of the home would continue through the long, dark night. Now let us look at where the Norse people actually slept. Along the walls of the longhouse, raised platforms were built from wood. These were called set or pall in Old Norse. These raised benches ran along both long walls of the house. During the day they served as seating, places to sit and work and talk. But at night they transformed. Furs and woolen blankets were unrolled across them. Pillows stuffed with feathers or dried grass were placed at one end, and the bench became a bed. Everyone slept on these benches, the entire household together in one long room. The head of the household and his wife might sleep in a slightly more private area at one end, sometimes separated by a simple wooden partition or a hanging curtain of woven wool. But for the most part, Viking sleep was communal. Children, servants, farmhands, and family members all sleeping in the same long room, side by side along the walls. The fire glowing in the centre, the sound of breathing all around, the smell of smoke and animals and pine. This communal sleeping arrangement was not considered strange or uncomfortable. It was simply life. There was safety in numbers, warmth in proximity, and a deep comfort in the sound of others sleeping nearby. The furs used for bedding were incredibly important. Bear fur, wolf fur, reindeer hide, and sheep wool were all used. A thick bear fur beneath you as a mattress, a heavy wool blanket pulled up to your chin, perhaps a reindeer hide thrown over the top on the coldest nights. In the depths of a Norse winter, with temperatures dropping far below freezing outside, this nest of fur and wool was not just comfortable, it was survival. Here is something fascinating about how Vikings actually slept. Like the Romans we explored before, the Norse people did not think of sleep as one single long block of time. Historical records and Norse sagas suggest that they too practiced segmented sleep. The first sleep would begin shortly after dark, which in winter could mean as early as 4 or 5 in the afternoon. The Norse family would gather around the dying fire. Stories might be told, poems recited, the day's work discussed quietly. And then one by one they would settle into their fur beds along the walls, and sleep would come quickly, deeply. After several hours, in the deep middle of the night, they might wake naturally. This waking was called the watch in Old Norse literature. During this time, people would tend the fire, check on the animals in the adjoining barn, use the time to think or pray or simply lie quietly in the darkness. The Norse had a rich tradition of night thought. Important decisions were often made during these quiet waking hours. Dreams were analysed and interpreted. And then the second sleep would come, deeper than the first, more surrendered. The kind of sleep where the body truly lets go, where dreams become vivid and strange, where the mind travels to places the waking world cannot reach. This is the sleep that is approaching you now, the second sleep, the deep sleep. Let it come. There is nothing you need to do, nothing you need to tend, no fire to check. Just the darkness and the warmth and the slow drift downward. the Vikings took their dreams extraordinarily seriously. In Norse culture, a dream was not random. It was not simply the brain processing the events of the day. A dream was a message, sometimes from the gods, sometimes from the dead, sometimes from fate itself. The Norse word for dream was draum, and a particularly significant dream was called a draum Mikil, a great dream. These great dreams were considered prophetic. They were taken so seriously that entire Norse sagas begin with someone having a powerful dream. The god most associated with wisdom and hidden knowledge was Odin, the Allfather. Odin was not a comfortable god, not a warm and reassuring presence. He was the god of wisdom, poetry, war, and death, and he was deeply associated with the night and with sleep. Odin had sacrificed one of his eyes at the well of Mimir to gain infinite wisdom. He had hung himself from the great world tree Yggdrasil for 9 days and 9 nights to learn the secrets of the runes. This willingness to endure darkness in pursuit of deeper knowledge was central to Norse spirituality. And sleep was seen as a kind of small death, a nightly journey to the edges of consciousness, where wisdom could be found if you were open to receiving it. The Norse also believed in a concept called the hamr, the shape. This was a spiritual double that could leave the body during sleep and travel through the world, what we might call a dream self. Powerful shamans called Seether practitioners were said to send their hammer travelling deliberately to gather information, to communicate with spirits, to see across vast distances while their body lay sleeping. For ordinary Norse people, the hammer travelled too, in dreams, through the 9 worlds of Norse cosmology. As you drift now, allow your own consciousness to loosen its grip on the waking world. Let your own hammer begin its nightly journey through the quiet dark, through the forests and fjords of your own inner landscape. You are safe. Your body is warm and still, and wherever your dreaming self travels tonight, it will return. Let us return to the longhouse as evening falls. The Viking day was long and physical. Farming, fishing, building, trading, sailing. These were people who worked with their bodies from before dawn until after dusk. By evening, the tiredness was deep and honest, the kind of tiredness that makes sleep feel like a gift rather than a necessity. The evening meal was the main meal of the day, called natmal in Old Norse, the night meal. It was eaten as darkness fell around the central fire, the whole household together. The food was simple but substantial. Thick stews of meat and root vegetables, dark rye bread baked in the morning, smoked fish, dried berries, and ale. Norse ale was thick and dark and nutritious, almost a food in itself, and it had the pleasant side effect of making sleep come easier, faster, deeper. After the meal, the household would gather around the fire. This was the time for stories. The Norse had an extraordinary storytelling tradition. The sagas were not written down at first. They were spoken, memorized and recited by skilled storytellers called skalds. Imagine sitting by a fire on a winter night in Norway, the wind howling outside, snow pressing against the thick turf walls, and a skald beginning a story, his voice low and rhythmic, the flames casting long shadows across the faces of the listeners. Children's eyes growing heavy, adults leaning back against the warm walls, the story weaving through the firelit air like smoke. The voices growing quieter, the pauses between words growing longer, until one by one the listeners slipped away, from the story, from the fire, from the waking world, into sleep. Of all the seasons, winter was when the Norse people slept the most. And this was not considered laziness, it was considered wisdom. The Norse understanding of the body was deeply seasonal. In summer, when the days were long and the work was endless, you worked. You fished and farmed and built and traded under the midnight sun. But in winter, when the darkness came and the snow buried the fields and the sea became too dangerous to sail, you rested. Winter was a time of drawing inward, of conserving energy, of repair and reflection and rest. The Norse had a special word for this winter rest period. It was called Iver Vetra, literally meaning over winter. During the deepest winter months, the pace of life slowed dramatically. People slept longer, woke later, napped in the afternoon. The body was allowed to follow its natural rhythm, responding to the darkness, responding to the cold, responding to the season. There is something deeply comforting about this, the idea that rest is not something to be stolen or apologized for, but something to be embraced as part of the natural order. The Norse farmer lying in his fur bed on a dark February afternoon, listening to the snow falling on the roof, was not being lazy. He was being sensible. He was following the wisdom of the season. He was giving his body what it needed. Just as you are doing right now, whatever time it is, whatever season surrounds you, you are giving your body what it needs. Rest, warmth, darkness, quiet. Let us return to the longhouse one final time. It is deep night now. The fire has burned down to a long bed of glowing embers, red and orange and deep gold, casting just enough light to see the shapes of sleeping people along the walls, the rise and fall of breathing beneath heavy furs. Outside, the wind moves through the pine forest, a low, steady sound, like breathing itself. Somewhere in the distance, a river moves under ice, its cold, dark water finding its way through the frozen landscape, patient and unstoppable. The stars above Scandinavia tonight are extraordinary. Without the glow of any city, any electric light, any sign of the modern world, the sky is impossibly vast. The Milky Way stretches from one dark horizon to the other, a river of ancient light. A Norse farmer lying awake in his longhouse might look up through the smoke hole in the roof and see those same stars and feel what humans have always felt beneath a vast night sky. Small, held, connected to something far larger than themselves. The same stars that are above you now, the same darkness, the same ancient invitation to rest. In longhouses across the Norse world, families are sleeping. Children curled against their mothers beneath reindeer hides, old farmers breathing slowly, young sailors dreaming of open water. All of them surrendered to the same great tide of sleep that has been pulling human beings under every single night for as long as there have been human beings. You are part of that tide now. You have always been part of it. Let it carry you. The story of Viking sleep is really the story of all human sleep. It is the story of people finding warmth in the cold, finding rest after honest work, finding peace in the darkness. They worried about the harvest, about the coming winter, about their children and their boats and their animals, just like you worry about your own things. And eventually they let all of it go, just like you can now. The longhouse is quiet tonight. The fire glows soft and low. The wind moves through the pine forest outside, patient and steady. Somewhere a Norse child is sleeping, curled beneath a fir that smells of wood smoke, dreaming of summer and open water and the smell of the sea. 1,000 years away from you, and yet not so different, not so far. The same darkness, the same warmth, the same surrender. Let your breathing slow now. Let your thoughts drift like snow falling on a dark forest, slowly, softly, without destination, without urgency. You have nowhere to be, nothing to solve. The night is long and dark and safe. The Norse world is sleeping all around you. The fire glows, the wind breathes, the stars wheel slowly overhead. And you are finally almost there. God Nat, good night.